Oh, I'm so sorry. I forgot I was recording. I don't know why my desk is such a mess right now. Just forgive the chaos. That seems to be a common theme around here. I'm so glad to be with you guys here today. I am your favorite Taviran, Bradford, and I'm here to do a quick review of the first half of the first season of the Amazon Prime show The Rings of Power, which I'm thrilled to talk about here. Just going to go over my quick thoughts, some general criticisms, and then overall my final ranking of these first 4 episodes. About the show in general, the show is developed and it was announced in, I think it was 2017 by Amazon Prime, and the 2 showrunners are very new to this line of work. This is the first massive production that they've had, which is a really interesting move on Amazon's part, considering The Wheel of Time had Rafe Judkins, who's been working in primetime television and entertainment for years, but yet didn't do a great job with The Wheel of Time Season 1. Don't really know how to respond to that, but there's still hope for the future. There's still redemption. As Randall Thor gets a crap ton of redemption, so there's that. Also, there were a lot of concerns that this was going to be woke as hell, which to a degree sort of is, but it's toned down. Also, Amazon has thrown the most money any studio or entertainment company has ever thrown at a TV or movie show. They're throwing $1 billion at this thing because they want it to work. They want it to out-dick, excuse my language, Game of Thrones. But I think House of the Dragon and Game of Thrones both have a well-established fan base from just recency bias alone, which gives them an edge in this arena. However, Rings of Power has a much longer running and more established storyline that the showrunners can work from. And I think that has so far been working in their favor, which I'm not complaining about because I love Tolkien. I'm currently reading, give me one sec, The Fall of Gondolin, which is set in the First Age, and it's one of the works developed and published by Tolkien's son Christopher, who sadly has passed away since then, but his estate continues to put out these works. And that's really exciting because that's more opportunity for storytelling and more opportunity to dive back into these worlds. Diving into some of the positives, I think this show looks amazing. I think you can see how much money they've put into this production. And I'm not complaining about that at all because I love high production value shows and movies. And it's really cool to see there's practical effects. There's tons and tons of on-location shooting for sets. There is some CGI, but that's necessary in some form or fashion for stories like these. However, you can tell this world looks lived in. It looks authentic. That was something The Wheel of Time didn't really have in its favor. That's something Game of Thrones did, and that House of the Dragon still does, even though House of the Dragon has a literal giant-ass set built for the Red Keep. They've introduced some really compelling characters. As much hate as Galadriel, played by Morfydd Clark, right here, has gotten for being very different from the books and from Tolkien's writings, I think she's doing a great job. I love her performance. I love the new Elrond, played by Game of Thrones alum Robert Aramayo. I love Disa. I love Durin. I love the Harfoots. I think they're amazing. And the new elf Arondir is fabulous. Just excellent casting. Additionally, I love how they're taking the story very slow. They're building tension. They're building anticipation. They're building intrigue for where we ultimately know this story is going to end. And that is working so far in the show's favor. Very much appreciative of that. Another positive. The writing is above average. It's better than I expected. The dialogue is, for the most part, pretty good. I really, really have enjoyed this show so far in terms of that. Lastly, even though it is very different canonically and even in style and shooting methods, it feels like Tolkien. It feels like his world. It feels like Middle-earth. And as a huge Middle-earth fan and fans of the Jackson films, rereading the books, they have nailed that. They've nailed the languages that Tolkien developed and how they sound, different words and how those words interact with other cultures. I think they've nailed it. They've done such a good job, and I've been so pleasantly surprised by that. I could not be more thankful that JD and Patrick have taken the time to develop this world and bring it back to screen, and plus seeing Numenor. Finally, we get to see Numenor. It's a dream. It truly, for us fans of Tolkien, seeing Numenor on screen is incredible for the first time. It's glorious. It's amazing. So this world feels like Tolkien's themes. It feels like the vision he had for Middle-earth. And I think that is so key. There are some gripes that I have. So swipe if you don't want to see them.
As much as I love Rings of Power so far, there are some negatives I have towards this show. Unfortunately, as much as I love Morfydd Clark as Galadriel, she has some issues. She's too headstrong. She's almost crossing into Mary Sue territory. And she also doesn't know how to take criticism or take help when it's needed. Additionally, there are some canon issues with the opening prologue, the maps of Middle-earth, and then a character later saying a geographical region of Middle-earth that was not mentioned on the map from the first age, which is when that region existed. Like, what the hell, Amazon? Come on. I understand you guys don't have the rights to the Silmarillion, but please judiciously use your name dropping of random places in this world, because that is a key location for the history of the elves and the history of Middle-earth going forward. Also, let's give the men some ground to stand on, because right now they don't feel very strong as characters other than Elendil and Isildur. I love Galadriel. I love Tarmiriel. I love Bronwyn. I think they're all excellent. But just don't make them in wooden plank boards. Please, for the love of God. Also, I think it would have done the show a lot better service if they had not name-dropped Sauron as early as they did, because we ultimately know where this story ends. It ends on the slopes of Mount Doom. Isildur takes the ring. He slowly gets corrupted by it, and he dies. We know how the story ends. Like, Peter Jackson's movies explain that fervently in the opening minutes of the film. So we know how the story ends. However, let's let it build in a mystery. Let's let it have some intrigue. Let's build up some excitement, some tension. Don't name drop the main villain in the opening minutes of the series, because that takes away all excitement. And I'm not a fan of that. Also, I think there's one particular sequence with Galadriel leading some elves that I think should have been cut. It just was, the pacing was off. It felt out of place. And I had some issues with that. Lastly, some of the pacing on this show is a little too brisk, It feels tonally inconsistent. Just ignore my Apple Watch. It feels tonally inconsistent. It feels like just as soon as we're starting to get to know and love these characters and what they're doing, we cut to another storyline. Game of Thrones did that really well and never missed a beat. Stranger Things had some struggles with it. This show definitely has some struggles with it. And also just the timing of when they're doing certain things, certain actions. The stories are starting to take off a little bit. Then all of a sudden you cut away, for example, from the Harfoots to Numenor, and it's like, what the heck is happening? Please stop. Just stay in one place at one time until whatever action in that place or whatever character moment in that place is completed. Don't switch when the tension is high and then go to a low, goofy storyline like the Harfoots. I love the Harfoots. That was just a side note. They're just a little bit more lighthearted of a tale. Unlike Galadriel being in dead pursuit of Sauron.
All that being said, I do believe this show so far has been above average, if not close to being great. There are still some things that we have to see where the storylines end up. I think I know where this is going based on the timelines presented at the end of Return of the King, at least for the end of this season. And ultimately, we know where the story is going by series end. We know the spoilers of it are in the first opening minutes of Jackson's Fellowship of the Ring. But I think the intrigue and the plot development, the character development can really be fleshed out in that time period. And they are changing a lot in terms of the events and when they happen. The main chunk of the Second Age is being scrunched into several years instead of being spread out over centuries, just for the sake of emotional investment in these characters. And I think that's a smart choice, but obviously there are some things they have to work around because of that, which is totally fine. This is an adaptation, not a retelling. So all that being said, I would say so far I give these first 4 episodes an 8.2 out of 10, and that is really good. This is almost great. It's excellent so far. Thanks everyone for tuning in. I will be back with more Rings of Power content coming, and maybe some Tolkien-esque book reviews. But until then, you better remember.
Driver picks the music.
Shotgun shuts.